From Facebook to Twitter, social media has become an everyday part of people's lives around the world. But in Uganda, using these platforms just got a little bit harder. At the start of this month, the government introduced a 5-cent daily tax on the use of social media. And Ugandans are far from impressed, saying the added cost is an attack on free speech. The measure was first proposed earlier this year by President Yoweri Museveni. He complained that social media was rife with gossip and urged his finance minister to deal with it. And in an ironic twist, the leader explained some of the other reasons behind the tax using, you guessed it, Twitter. So, is this a legitimate tariff or a way of curtailing dissent? To answer that, I'm joined from Kampala by Nicholas Opiyo. He's a lawyer and founder of the human rights organization Chapter Four Uganda. Thanks so much for joining us. Nicholas, is this new law and this new tax as crazy as it sounds?
Absolutely. It's extraordinarily crazy, because what they're doing on this tax is taxing people for using social media. Remember that people have paid taxes on the data that they use, on the airtime that they use, and they're being taxed a third time for simply accessing and using social media. In terms of taxing principles, it is not just double but triple taxation, but also taxing a service they don't provide. Because excise duty that is being levied for use of social media is a duty on products or services that you have provided. The government doesn't provide social media, so taxing people for just using the platform is absolutely crazy.
So why do you think they're doing this?
This tax is a tax that comes on a backdrop of the president's express uneasiness with social media, which has become a very powerful tool for political organizing. Let's just flash back a bit and remember that on election day in Uganda in 2016, the government shut down social media. On the day that President Museveni was being sworn in, the president again shut down social media. The allegations at the time were that social media was being used to foment insecurity. Consistently after that, government has been peddling a narrative that paints social media not as a good instrument for development, but rather as a tool for organizing against government. Therefore, the express intended purpose for levying this tax is not about revenue collection. Rather, it's about a new tool for suppressing dissent. Social media has become a very powerful tool for organizing in this country, especially among the urban elite. So this tax is seen as a tax to limit access to and use of social media as a platform for organizing.
Okay, so maybe their execution is wrong. Maybe what they're doing hasn't been fully thought through. But at the core of it all, does Museveni have a point? And does the government have a point that what they call lugambo or gossip has terrible consequences sometimes? That sometimes on social media, by the sharing of what can be called, say, fake news on Facebook and Twitter and even WhatsApp in these mass messages, it can cause a riot. People can die by people spreading malicious and fake information. Do they have a point at least with regards to that?
If they do have a point about it, then they don't make that point as expressly as you've made it. It is true that social media has been used in some cases for really, really, really bad intentions. People who have slandered other people, people who have spread false information. But to focus on that takes away attention from the massive benefit of new media. Remember that social media has been a space for young people to provide for employment. There are several people who have begun businesses whose module is around social media. There are people who are accessing critical information about health, about education, about the economy, about all sorts of things on social media. So whilst there are a few people on social media who may have been spreading hate messages, who have been spreading rumors, it should not dwarf the benefit of social media and how social media has been instrumental in providing employment, providing access to information. In many cases, even government institutions communicate messages on social media. So social media, like any other platform, is just a platform. The misuse of that platform is not different from the misuse of radio, the misuse of the wider web, or the misuse of any forms of communication. So I think other than focus on the negativity the few incidents of negativity on social media, we should look at the greater good and benefit and harness that greater good and benefit. And if we do so, we have the ability to encourage a community of responsible users online.
Yeah, and I understand.
People who spread false news don't get much traction in the long run.
Right, and I understand that on Wednesday there's a national march against this law and this tax. It's going to be interesting to see what sort of numbers we have from people there. Very finally, so what are people doing right now? The law's in effect. This is happening. Service providers are implementing this. Are people just using VPNs as a workaround?
There are several people that I know, including myself, who have never paid a cent of that tax because there are other ways of going around the tax. We've used VPN, we've used other means to avoid the tax. There are other people who have gone to court to challenge the tax and to make the point that the tax is really an undue restriction on access to information and free expression. But there are also other people who have promised to go on the street on Wednesday to protest this tax. I don't think that the police will allow them to do so. I reckon that they will be dispersed. They won't be allowed to express themselves. But I do think that if they were allowed to express themselves, hundreds of people around the country would turn up for this demonstration. But more importantly, even the government itself has realized that this tax is causing a problem. We've had government ministers saying publicly that they're going to review and reflect on how this tax is being applied and how best they can resolve the question. On the question of mobile money, the president himself has pronounced that he has reduced the charges on use of mobile money to 0.5% from 1%. So clearly, this process of enacting the law was put up hurriedly without careful thought of the impact and its implication on the people. I think that government will go back to the drawing board. The Minister of Finance has promised to bring a law in Parliament to review the amendment. So I'm hopeful that the government will rethink this tax and scrap it altogether in the coming months, because the public outcry across the country, across ages, across the political divide has been against the tax.
Nicholas Opiyo, great to talk to you here on the Newsmakers. Thank you very much for joining us.